Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here, and I've got another Master Duel video for you. So, we're doing another deck profile here for Kashtira. I wanted to come back to this deck, and actually I am even coming back to the exact same build as last season. Last season we covered this deck, and it had actually been a little while since we covered a pure Kashtira. I'd been preferring Zodiac Kashtira, but I think for this meta in particular, I really think the pure variant has a lot going for it, right? The main thing, of course, being Dimension Shifter, which the Zodiac variant can play as well. But indeed, I've said it a couple of times on the channel already, and you probably don't need me to tell you that Dimension Shifter is a particularly powerful card, especially in this format, right? Where we are seeing a lot of Snake Eye, especially more upper ladder like Diamond and Master, right? The higher up you go, the more and more and more Snake Eye decks you are going to run into. So being able to cut them off of their graveyard access is definitely a great thing. It doesn't always like completely stop the deck, particularly on turn 2, but turn 1 a lot of the time it forces them to do some very weird stuff, or not really just be able to do their full lines as a result. But it's more than just the Dimension Shifter, right? Because that's like the obvious answer. But like I said, Kashtira does have a lot more going on for it, and I think the reason why I definitely prefer the pure variant to the Zodiac variant in this particular meta is the pure variant's ability to just play so many different tech cards, right? Not just tech, but we also have a lot of gas going for us as well. Again, same build as last time, so I'm on 2 of each Planet Pathfinder and Small World. I did actually consider cutting one or maybe even both of the Pathfinders and adding a third Small World, then maybe like another card, because although I don't know, see, that's the thing, right? It's such a catch-22 with the Planet Pathfinder. Like being able to find the field spell and just start your plays is so important. But I think of the starters, Pathfinder's probably like one of my least favorite for this deck. Just because it's got a lot of different ways it can get negated and stopped, especially if you're going second. This thing just like eats called bys like it's nobody's business. So I don't know. On that note, it's like, I feel kind of meh about this card. But on the other hand, I do like the sort of like diversity of ways that we have to go into plays between both Planet Pathfinder and Small World. So just sticking with 2 of each for now. Let's see here. What else I want to talk about? Oh, like the hand trap lineup here, right? Like obviously D-Shifter is going to be really solid. But as far as like other hand traps I included in the deck, you might be wondering why I played Drolls. I think I've actually gotten a couple of comments that are like, you're still on Droll in all these decks? You know Super Heavy Samurai isn't nearly as popular as it was. And it's like, yeah, Droll might not be the best against Snake Eye in particular. But of course, you know, you got to be thinking about more than just like using it against one deck, especially when we're thinking about a card like Droll and Lockbird. I know I've mentioned this before, but one thing I'm really looking to use Droll and Lockbird as a lot of the time right now is just as a maxi like hate tool, right? And Kashtira can actually play under Droll after a certain point, right? So, you know, let's say that you run out the Unicorn, and then they maxi you. Because a lot of the time, honestly, in this meta, people aren't shotgunning maxis during the draw phase, and I don't think it's right to. A lot of, in fact, pretty much every top meta deck, aside from this one, and a couple of others, of course, will definitely telegraph their first special summon. I mean, as always ever, it just so depends on your hand, right? Like, if you have, like, a literally perfect hand plus maxi, perfect as in you've got all the starters you want and another piece of disruption or two, then yeah, I can see a world where shotgunning maxi during the draw phase isn't a terrible idea. But I think for me, you know, even if I have a hand that's got like my 1-card starter and also another piece of disruption, I'm still looking to get more value out of maxi in that kind of situation. So, but let's even say they did shotgun it during the draw phase, right? They shotgun draw phase maxi, you've got a Droll in hand, and also Unicorn. You can special Unicorn, give them 1 draw, and then add the Theosis, activate Theosis for Fenrir, that gives them 2 draws. You're going to use Fenrir in order to add the Rise Heart to hand, and then that would, and once you summon that, that'll give them 3, and then you can draw them and play through your stuff. But again, the vast majority of the time, they're not going to be shotgunning that draw phase max C, so you're only giving them 2 draws. But even if you give them the 3rd, there are so many matchups where giving them 3 draws is so fine if it means you can set up the Rise Heart plus Era, because you know, I will say that there are some decks that can have a bit of a time playing through this. Or I guess just trying to get rid of it, right? If they don't open, like, Imperm or like Snake Eye Subversion is seeing play in a lot of decks, not just Snake Eye, but other decks too. I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? Like, it can be a little bit tricky to deal with a Rise Heart sometimes, but this card also has, like, literally 0 protection. So, I mean, I've said before, infamously on Twitter, actually, in the past, you can Smashing Ground this card, and it'll die. Like, it's one of those cards where, and I know I'm gonna get comments of people being like, oh, so you're saying just draw the out. No, that's not at all what I'm saying. Just draw the out is saying just draw one specific out to this board. What I'm saying is there are so many goddamn outs you can draw to this card. It's kind of unreal how many cards can either negate or just get rid of this, because it has literally no protection effect whatsoever. But I digress. Still on no extravagance in this build. I don't like that card. I've not been playing it in other decks like Labyrinth, and just other decks you might typically see it in. With that card being limited, I just don't think it's worth building your extra deck around the vast majority of the time, right? Like, even decks like Kashtira and Labyrinth that don't use the vast majority of their extra deck, you know, these, like, little one-of slots can still very easily matter, right? The Titanic Moth, or the Shenyang, or the Donner, the Infinitrack. Like, I've had the Gaia Charger even, or the Gaia Dragon rather, like, I've had situations where if I haven't made one of these cards, I've definitely considered it for literally all 15 of these cards, and I have not played very much of this deck, mind you. So, the same is true of Labyrinth as well. It's like, people, you know, it's easy to think again, like, oh, it's Lab, the extra deck doesn't matter at all. But it does, it actually super does. Just not for every single game, like a more typical combo deck. But my point is that I think that having a diverse pool for your extra deck, for a deck that doesn't really need to play that many specific things, is more valuable than the one-of extravagance. I think that for most of these decks, in my opinion, I don't have any like hard statistical data to back this up, but in my opinion, most of these decks that are playing the one-of extrav, if they're even going to their extra deck a little bit, or occasionally, or like even once every 10 games, I think you should really question whether your one copy of extrav or all 15 cards in your extra deck are going to come up more. Because I think the majority of the time it's going to be the extra deck, unless you're on something like Stun, that literally does not care what is in the extra deck at all. If you're on a deck like that, then sure, whatever, it's fine. But I think, again, especially for a deck like this, like Kashtira, I can't fathom running Extrav in this deck right now. I mean, I can. Like, of course, you would just play, like, a third Era and a third Arise Heart or whatever. And then also, like, additional copies of your most important extra deck monsters. But again, do I think having one copy of Extravagance is more important than having Shenyang and Gaia Charger and Titanic Moth and Tunneler and Donner and Goliath? I mean, you probably play Donner and Goliath anyway, but do I think it's more important than having those cards? I kind of don't think it is, honestly. So, that's kind of my working theory right now for Extrav and why it's notably missing from this list here. Otherwise, again, like I said, same list as last season. It's been working very, very well for me, so normally I do kind of like assess the build and see, you know, season to season if I want to update anything or how I'm feeling about it. But this was one of those cases where I looked at these 40 cards and 15 of the extra and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to keep rolling with it. So let's break down this list card by card and then we'll take a look at some games. We are on 2 Droll and Lockbird, 3 Maxi, 3 Ash Blossom and a Joy Spring, 2 Planet Pathfinder, 3 Kashtira Rise Heart, 2 Dimension Shifter, 1 Kashtira Fenrir, 3 Kashtira Unicorn. We've got 2 Kashtira Ogre, 1 Scareclaw Kashtira. As an aside, I am thinking about swapping those ratios. We got 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 2 Triple Tactics Talent, 1 Pot of Prosperity, 2 Small World, 3 Kashtira Theosis, 1 Pressured Planet Wraitsoth, 1 Kashtira Birth, 2 Call by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 3 Infinite Permanents, 1 Kashtira Big Bang, and then finally 1 Kashtira Preparations. That's going to do it for our main deck. For the extra deck, we are on 1 Baron Diffler, 1 Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Shenyang, 1 number 11 Big Eye, 1 Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger, 1 Red Eyes Metal Flare Dragon, 1 number 28 Titanic Moth, 1 Dark Armed the Dragon of Annihilation, 1 Infinitrack Mountain Smasher, 2 Kashtira Shangri Era, 2 Kashtira Rise Heart, 1 Divine Arsenal Zeus Sky Thunder, 1 Infinitrack Goliath, and then finally 1 Donner Dagger for hire. That'll do it for our list. Let's go to see these games. So something kind of funny that I totally forgot until I started looking at these, what my decks my opponents were on for these replays is that although I brought Kashtira to take against like Snake Eye and stuff like that, I just ran into other more, like, controlling decks pretty much this whole play session. We're starting off with a game here against Natria. Opening up fairly well, honestly. We got Sea, Blossom, and then Pathfinder for our turn. So definitely going to start by maxing in response to the summon effect of the Runic Smiting Storm. It's going to bring out the Hugin, the Runic Wings. Hugin's going to activate its effect, discarding to add the Fountain here. I'm going to use Ash Blossom on that, even though I did see them discard the Natria Sacred Tree. When it comes down to it, you know, with Natria Runic, the deck is only at its strongest if you can get both engines going online at the same time. And if I had to choose between cutting off one engine or the other, I think that, you know, more times than not, the Runic engine could be a bit more tricky to deal with. Here, they actually end up having the Runic tip to search the Fountain anyway, so it kind of didn't matter. But I do want to stress that it only kind of didn't matter. The reason it only kind of didn't matter is because, while of course they did get to activate and set up the Fountain anyway, one thing that we did notice we get to do by cutting them off with the Hugin search there is that they had to use the tip to add the Fountain, and presumably they don't have another Runic spell in hand. Otherwise, they definitely would have used it and then drawn 3 cards. Unless it was a Runic spell they can't use because they already have Hugin in the EMZ, and I don't have any cards on the field. Remember that Runic can only activate their additional effects pretty much if I have stuff to interact with. Which is funny because people have often said that Runic is like one of the most uninteractive decks of all time, but I'm going to start by impriming the Natria Camellia. That might seem a little bit odd, but the reason that I did it was because I didn't want it to come up with, like... Well, I thought they'd been the Mole Cricket. I actually totally missed that they'd been to the Sunflower. So, you know, I was like, okay, if the Mole Cricket comes back and then it goes into stuff, I don't want them to be milling for the cost, so... yeah, no, it's just, also decided to throw it out because, of course, once I start playing cards, I'm not going to be able to play it anymore. Granted, if I paid more attention to the art, I probably would have realized I didn't really need to imprime this at all, so that was a bit of a waste there. Let's see, they are going to use the Flashing Fire to destroy the Kashtira Unicorn there. Gonna try to draw 3 off the Fountain. I'm definitely gonna use my Ash Blossom to put a stop to that. Very glad I opened 2 here. Not normally the case to be glad to open 2, but this case, this game was definitely an exception. So I do still get to use the Planet Pathfinder here for the Wraitsoth. I'm gonna use Wraitsoth to add another Unicorn because I have not actually activated Unicorn's effects yet. So I get to add a Theosis here. I'm gonna activate the Kashtira Theosis for the Fenrir. Fenrir F is going to add the Rise Heart. Just kind of doing standard stuff, although I will, I think, take a little bit of a detour to battle here, because I think I would much rather have the a Rise Heart online than like a... Well, I don't know, I guess I could have gone for a Zeus here. If I'd made, like, literally any rank 7. Maybe I should have just made Zeus here. I was thinking about making a Rise Heart because it represented not only... And the era, too, of course. Oh, no, that's right. I made Dark Armed here instead. Although, I don't know. Oh, you know what? Okay, I actually remember what I was thinking during this duel now. Because I did actually consider going into Zeus. But the problem is, if I make it Xyz by overlaying 2 of my 7s and going into Zeus, I'm giving up one of my bodies on the board. And also, I'm not going to have any materials left to use Zeus on the opponent's turn. So I decided to hedge here a bit and use Dark Armed instead. By using Dark Armed to pop the Runic Fountain, which is the only card I really want off their field, what I can do here is I can keep my Fenrir online, and then I can potentially hold off on going into the Zeus for the follow-up turn here. And as a fun, just additional thing, I get to wheel this Ogre back to my hand by banishing the Theosis with Dark Arm's effect. Opponent's kind of on top deck mode. They do have a Runic Slumber. They're going to use that to get Jerry the Runic Fangs. Jerry's going to let them add back the Runic Fountain. And I did ultimately, I think, not decide to use the Fenrir effect here. That's right, I was thinking about it, but I ultimately chose not to. Because I wondered if their last card was going to be, you know, just like another body, like if they were going to try to Synchro Summon. But indeed, it actually ended up being a Runic spell, and now they're going to get to draw 3 off of the Fountain. I do get to banish the Fountain here, or at least I'm going to try to, but nah, they have the freezing curses for us. We do get to beat out the freezing curses, though, which is actually pretty relevant, especially in this kind of a game state, right? Because that means our opponent not only doesn't have it for our turn, but also doesn't have more draws. But going into Donner and using Donner to blow up my Fenrir, which is kind of interesting given that I have I have an Xyz monster on the field right here. Although, to be fair, if they left Fenrir, of course, I get to just activate that and then kind of go off from there. So, yeah, I'm just going to battle with the Dark Armed and then go into our Zeus. I kind of figure the face down is probably the quick play spell they added, the Natria one. So, yeah, here it is. Natria Blessing, going to bring back the Camellia. Camellia effect is going to activate to send off another Sacred Tree. Sacred Tree F will activate to add us, or add them, rather, a Mole Cricket, but that's fine. I'm not really caring about that at all. Now that I have a Zeus online, I'm definitely not really caring about that. They're going to summon Mole Cricket. I'm just going to use this opportunity to activate it, because, yeah, even if they chain Mole Cricket in response, right, then Mole Cricket resolves first. They get their 2 monsters. I know they don't have a Sunflower, because that's already in the yard. And then they just lose their board. I did take a bit... Well, here's the thing, though. Even if they did have a second to Sunflower, which there was no shot they did, but even if they did, right, you can't activate a monster effect as a chain link is resolving. So Zeus still would have resolved and completely wiped their field all the same. Alright, here opponent's in range of being struck down, but unfortunately I didn't top anything I could normal summon. I mean, to be fair, it's actually kind of difficult in a deck like this. Like, really looking at my deck, where is it? Here. I would have only been able to top, what, 1 of 2 cards? Or maybe 3, I guess, with the Kashtira Scareclaw. But, oh, you know what? Birth here was another top deck, right? Opponent's going to chain Maxi to the Kashtira Birth, and now I've just got them dead to rights, 2 rights over, right? I can normal summon Ogre without tributing, and then also use triple attack to steal their face-down monster. So, it literally, yeah, it didn't matter. I had lethal there, bar some crazy flip effect monster like a Man-Eater Bug. Man-Eater Bug actually would have stopped them from dying that turn. But, yeah, no, that's going to do it for our first game here. Quite a bit of a back and forth against Natria Runic. But, you know, I think, like, a lot of the time, the way to play against a deck like Natria Runic is to just keep a level head, you know? The game's going to be grindy almost no matter what. The game is going to go on for, like, multiple turns. If they open, like, even halfway decent. So you just got to be prepared for that. And be prepared to not necessarily try to win the duel all at once just to get it over with. But to just use your resources more slowly and carefully. Because, you know, again, the duel is going to last a long time. So you got to just be ready for that. And I think sometimes people... Well, you know, they'll already be frustrated because they're matching against Natria, a deck that most people don't like. And then when they throw everything all out at once and it doesn't, like, you know, kill the opponent because of, like, the advantage and or disruption represented by Fountain, then, you know, they get frustrated and it's like, oh, I don't have anything left and I'm just going to have to, like, slowly, basically bleed out in this duel. But, yeah, that will do it for this first game. Let's take a look at the next one. And like I said, we're playing against a lot of different, you know, non-combo decks. This is Stun that we're actually playing against. It's more of a Kashtira Stun, but I don't really want to call it a mirror match because they're on Fossil Dyna and Macro and like Solemn Warnings too. It's a little bit odd, but anyway, going second yet again here. Opponent's going to lead with the Kashtira Fenrir. Fenrir is going to try to activate its effect. I'm just going to use the Imperm here. I've got another one so I can use it on the follow-up turn as well, and it's like, I just don't want to take any chances. Like, if this is the mirror, truly, then I don't want them to set up. But then they activated Clockwork Knight. And as soon as I saw the Clockwork Knight and then the macro get flipped up, I'm like, oh, okay, so it's just Stun then. Stun with a Kashtira package. Chaining the Maxi to the macro just to throw it out there on the off chance my opponent does special summon this turn, but... Like I said, going to lead with the Imperm on the Fenrir. Get to summon the Rice Heart and then activate Theosis for my own Fenrir. I'm going to use my Fenrir F, but the opponent has an Imperm for it. So that's definitely less than ideal, but far from the end of the world by any means. What I get to do here now is activate the Rice Heart effect. I'm just going to banish an Ogre because banishing Big Bang doesn't do anything here. If you have Era out, then you should be banishing Big Bang. But if you don't, then... just an Ogre is usually what I banish. Here we have one of our niche extra deck monsters coming up. Number 28, Titanic Moth. Gonna get in a direct battle with it and then summon the Zeus. And I am actually going to use the Zeus now while the Fenrir is negated. Although I guess to be fair, that might have actually been the wrong play now that I think it. Well, because I think the main thing... Well, but if they have another negate, they would have had to have set it and I could have done it during the end phase. Yeah, you know what? So during the game, I was thinking like, oh, I gotta preemptively Zeus to get around the Fenrir. But that was actually a horrible play now that I think about it, because Fenrir needs to be on the field after the monster effect, like, has already... You know, like, after that chain link is already resolved. Unless I'm misremembering that. I should know that off the top of my head. Jeez, I'm psyching myself out right now, trying to figure out if that was right or not. I do allow them to special another Kashtira monster by preemptively Zeusing. I actually don't think I had to preemptively Zeus, now that I really think about it. Alright, so the Ogre is going to activate, revealing the top 5 cards of my deck. Now, as always ever, you gotta remember about the Kashtira Ogre. When it reveals 5, it's going to show you the cards in the order they're in on the top of the deck. And it does not shuffle. Ogre does not shuffle. They're still going to be in that order. This is both very important for the person playing with and against Kashtira Ogre, right? So, if I'm my opponent and I hit you with the Ogre, right? And I see these cards here, I think I would almost assuredly take the Kashtira Unicorn. Because think about it, right? From my opponent's perspective, you know, they're on stun. Maxi's not going to do anything. Rise Heart by itself doesn't do anything. Big Bang Extra does nothing here. And I have cards in the yard, so Shifter does nothing. That means that Unicorn is the card most likely to advance my game state, so I think that is the card worth taking. And not only that, but again, it ensures that my next few draws are not going to be that great. I was horribly scared when I saw these 5 cards. And then my opponent banishes the Maxi, and I'm just like, okay? That's 100% fine. Not only did you eat my worst card, but now you've drawn me into my best card on the next turn immediately. Granted, of course, I can't summon the Unicorn right away because I have a Zeus on my field, but, you know, this is all just kind of assuming that my Zeus gets answered, right? If my Zeus gets answered, then Unicorn is by far the correct card to take. If my Zeus doesn't get answered, well, then you're losing anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I have no clue why they took Max C here. That's very, very bizarre to me, but... I mean, I'm definitely okay with it, so... Yeah, I'm just going to turn the Zeus back to attack mode, run over their Ogre, and just pass back over to them. Not much else I can do at this point, but to be fair, this Zeus is pretty threatening, especially for a deck like my opponent's. Even without the ability to, like, blow up the field, right? Yep, so here is the Rise Heart. I believe I do end up summoning that, yep. And then my opponent just concedes here, even though I didn't have lethal. And they knew I didn't have lethal because they should know the top 4 cards, or the top however many left after a 2. Yeah, 2 cards left in my deck after the Rise Heart. I don't know. I mean, to be fair, also I would have gotten a shuffle with the Rise Heart. But I don't know. It's like, that information is there. Just make sure you're not missing it, right? I feel like my opponent was definitely missing that information. Them assuming that the Excavate isn't in the same order, which is a very easy assumption to make. There are not many cards that work like Kashtira Ogre does, but if you do read the Ogre, it does say here, and yeah, literally the last sentence, place the rest on the top of the deck in the same order. So just gotta make sure that we're paying attention to not only the wording of our cards, but then the information that our cards also give to us. Okay, I think I'm going to show us one more game, and then I'm going to call it for this video. Okay, our last opponent is on a deck that I don't know if I've ever seen this before, but I'm kind of surprised I haven't. It's branded Sword Soul. I'm sure somebody else out there has done it at some point, but this is, I don't know if I've ever particularly seen it before, so this hand is kind of wild. I'm like spoiled for choice here. I led with the Unicorn, but in hindsight, I definitely should have led with the Pot of Prosperity. Even the opportunity to get the cross out here for the Imperm would have been pretty big. I guess the reason I didn't lead with Prosperity... Why didn't I lead with Prosperity? I'm trying to think of a reason why... Well, the reason why I wouldn't is because of Droll. I think that's what I was thinking about when I led by specialing Unicorn and activating before activating Prosperity. I don't know, it's like, you kind of sometimes got to figure out what you want to try to play against, right? And I guess here I just decided to try to play against... Well, because here's the thing, right? Because if I Droll, or if I activate Pot of Prosperity and add, and they Droll afterward, the rest of this hand does, like, nothing under Droll. But if I Unicorn and add Theosis, and then they Droll, I can at least still Theosis for Fenrir, and, like, end on Unicorn plus Fenrir, right? That's still a pretty solid end board, so... But, again, I think I was focusing a little bit too much on one hand trap and didn't consider the myriad of others, which Pot of Prosperity could potentially help me find the cross out for that. Okay, so I think if I had preemptively Prosperity there, just looking at these excavates, Unicorn I definitely would have taken because I already had one. C I definitely would have taken because I already have two. A couple of the choices were, oh no, just one of the choices were Imperm, and then Triple Attack and Small World were the others. Oh, and Call By, that was the other card I was missing. So, I probably would have taken Call By or Triple Attack. I think in this situation, probably Triple Attack. I would have hedged and taken that. Maybe Call By. But here, now that I know that my Unicorn's an Imperm, and I'm not going to have any plays after that, I'm just going to take an Imperm of my own and hope to use it to stop my opponent's board state from advancing too far, alongside this Maxi, of course. So, but it's going to start with the Ecclesia, followed by the Emergence for the Taya. Normal summoning Taya and activating the effect here. I'm going to end up using my Maxi. They're definitely playing very well around the Imperm. Opponent's going to chain with the Ecclesia, and that's pretty expected, given that, of course, they want to get these summon out before I get the draw off of it, right? Alright, so we're going to use Moye, revealing the Golden Sword Soul. When I saw the Golden Sword Soul, I was like, wow, so this person's on, like, every Sword Soul card, huh? Okay, I decided to use my Imperm here, which, even during the game itself, I kind of had this moment of, like, why did I do that? Okay, so I also want to talk about this Unicorn activation, right? So the Unicorn effect here, I ultimately end up using it to take their Albion, because once I saw the branded cards in their extra deck, I was like, oh, okay, well, if they're on a small branded package, then, you know, I don't want them to just, like, be able to drop branded fusion from their hand right now, and just be able to go off, like, you know, all over me. So I'll take the Albion and stop that line. Now, one thing I did consider is that, well, if I do that, though, and I don't take a level 10 Synchro, they're going to... Well, that's the thing, too, right? I considered taking Baron de Fleur, but it's like, even if I take Baron, they're still going to make another 10. They have other 10s they can make, so I decided to take the Albion and hedge a little bit and stop them from going into their fusion line, like, completely at all. But it's going to follow up not with Brain Diffusion, but with Pot of Desires to draw a couple of cards, and that is going to find them their Longyan, which was like, you know, I was like, no! And of course, Ash Blossom was literally my next draw. If they had just special summoned the Chi Shao, I could have Ash Blossomed the Chi Shao. Well, not if they synced with Moye, because then they could have chain blocked, right? But still, it's like, of course they had the Desires! I guess to be fair, it's like, I wasn't even considering a card like Desires, you know, even though it is, like, pretty decently popular in a deck like Sword Soul. It's a one of, to be fair, it's like limited, so it's like, I mean, I guess Brain Diffusion is as well, but it's like, there's a difference between, you know, the tech card that the deck doesn't even always play, you know, regular Sword Soul that is, and like, the whole other half of their engine, or the whole other half of their deck, the other engine, right? And this is the most painful part, is that I actually got the Nibiru, but alas, I guess that was one reason to take Baron and not, like, another level 10 Synchro or even a branded card, was because I max seed, if I drew into Nibiru, then, yeah, maybe I should have just planned on trying to draw into Nibiru, I guess? That would have been the best way to play to my outs there? I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out if I actually had, like, a better... I think it was one of those options where there was no one best card to take, right? And that can happen a lot of the time. That's actually one of the main reasons why I wanted to share this game. I think a lot of the time, players will get fixated on the idea... I see this happen all the time in tournament feature matches of, like, you know... Somebody will make a play that doesn't end up going well for them, and then everyone's like, oh, they made the wrong play. And it's like, well, yeah, you can say that now that you have the information of knowing what the opponent had for the follow-up, but when assessing whether a play was correct to make or not, you have to put yourself in the position of the player at that moment, you know? At that moment, I didn't know what was in my opponent's hand. If I had known they had a Desires, then I might have been more inclined to pick the Baron as far as the banish option, right? Of course, on the other hand, if I knew for sure they had like a random brand diffusion or something in hand, then yeah, then Albion definitely would have been the correct choice. And there is so another timeline out there where I pick the Baron and it turns out my opponent had the brand diffusion and then I get wrecked by the branded half of the engine, right? So it's like, you know, that's a phrase called results-oriented thinking, or rather, you know, saying that I misplayed here by not taking Baron is results-oriented thinking, because the result, because you know the result, then you're able to change your mindset around it. But again, like I said, I think it really is best to put yourself in the position of the player at that moment with the information they have available. So, again, I thought that was a pretty interesting little interaction that ended up coming up here, so thought I'd show this game. But yeah, that'll do it for this video. Thank you everybody so very much for watching these games. Let's move now to our outro. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. That means a lot to me. It's also a great way to support the channel, so thank you very much in that way as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways, like the very special patrons that I am thanking here, you can do so by checking out some of the links in the description. One of those goes to the Patreon, where you can join these fine folk and support the channel that way. I do post daily content over on Patreon, so you do get something for supporting there. And if you're interested, I also have a coaching tier option as well. Details again will be on Patreon in the link below. Also in the description linked below is my Twitch page where I stream a few times a week. You can go ahead and check that out, follow or subscribe over there if you ever want to catch me live. You'll also find my second YouTube channel if you feel like subscribing over there to watch some of the Twitch VODs as well as some additional non-Yu-Gi-Oh related content that I make over there. Again, any of those links you want to check out is all a great way of supporting. But again, even if you don't do that, just watching was also a fantastic way to support. And once again, I have to thank you so very much. But in any case, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out, and I'm hoping you have a fantastic day.